So, have you heard the story about the fact that 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency expense? It's very concerning. And if you're a part of that group, tonight I'm going to show you how you can transition yourself out of the group of people that are living on the edge and get started with your very first emergency fund. Hello, this is Ronette with Freedom and Passive Income, and tonight we're going to talk about not only why you should have an emergency fund, but how you should get started with your very first emergency fund. Now, if you're new to the channel, I would love for you to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and then that way you will get the latest tips, strategies, and information to support your desire to dream, believe, and achieve freedom and passive income. So we're still in the month of January where a lot of people are making their New Year's resolutions. One of the most common New Year's resolutions is to get out of debt, which is a great goal to have, is to get out of debt. But I'm going to challenge you and say that before you think about getting out of any debt, before you start thinking about paying off anything, that you assess your situation and make sure that you have an emergency fund in place. Now, I'm not going to suggest the normal, 6 months of living expenses, because if you're just getting started, if you already have that, then this video really isn't for you. But if you don't have anything, and if you're part of the 40% that I talked about at the beginning of the video, you want to get started with at least a basic emergency fund. And I think that $1,000 is a good place to start. You might, if you're able to, in a fairly short period of time, you might want to up that to $2,000. But I think that $1,000 is a very good place to start to have an emergency fund. And so, but what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about why you should have one. I mean, it seems obvious, that you should have one for emergencies, but I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called Murphy. And it's like when you don't have what you need in place, then it seems like that's when everything happens. That's when everything falls apart. That's when, you need new tires, or the radiator goes out in your vehicle, or you have some type of emergency dental work that needs to be done, or someone in your family needs something, that was totally unexpected. And so when you don't have anything, it seems like that's when everything happens, if you really think about it. But when you have that little cushion, I think that it just gives you a sense of peace. And you can operate with your finances and other activities with just a sense of knowing that if anything happened, you can access cash right away. And this is money that you want to be liquid. You want it to be in a savings account or a money market account. This is not money that you want to be putting in a CD or something like that, something that you can't touch. This needs to be liquid cash. So maybe you may have, a little bit at home, and maybe you may have a little bit in a savings account, but it definitely needs to be money that you can get to right away. So that's the very first obvious reason why you would want to have an emergency fund. So, and then the next thing is that you want to make sure that you are responsible with that money. This is money that you do not want to spend on anything. You really need to be realistic about what an emergency is. An emergency is not that you're going out and you need a new outfit. No, that's not an emergency. What I consider an emergency is when you have a immediate financial need that is something that absolutely has to be done right now. It's something that cannot wait. It's something that you can't replace, another situation or other resources and obtain the same result. It's something that has to happen right now. And so you want to make sure that you are realistic about what an emergency is first. And then once you have done that, then you'll be able to preserve those funds for when they're really needed. And so how do you go about setting up your emergency fund? You may want to check out my other videos. I've done other videos about how to stop living, paycheck to paycheck. That helps you, gives you tips on how to be efficient with your funds. Another video I've done is called how to save money on groceries without couponing. And that will be a good video to look at, because your grocery bill is like one of your biggest expenses. And if you can be more efficient with that, then that's money that you can allocate to your emergency fund. And so those are the biggest things that you want to do. You just want to be efficient with your funds, and you want to make sure that you're not being wasteful, that you're not buying anything you really don't need. And I personally define need as food, clothing, and shelter, health care, and transportation. To me, those are like the non-negotiables. So if it doesn't qualify one of those needs, then it's not really a need, it's a want. And so if it's not a need, then you want to make sure that any extra funds are being allocated to your emergency fund of a minimum of $1,000. Once you have that minimal foundation in place, then you can start taking your extra funds and getting out of debt. And then what you want to do is, after you've gotten out of debt, then you want to circle back around and increase your emergency fund even more, and go to maybe like 2 months of living expenses. And then that way you really have a cushion. And then after that, of course, you know what the recommended amount is to have 6 months of living expenses. Some people say 6 months of your income. I guess it just kind of depends on what you feel most comfortable with, what you feel is realistically achievable for yourself. But it needs to be either 6 months of your income or 6 months of your living expenses. After that, then you'll look into investments and things of that nature. So you don't want to put the cart before the horse. I would personally suggest that, if you have money and you're putting money in a 401k, but you don't have a minimal emergency fund, the wise thing to do would be to pause your investments on your 401k and get your emergency fund in place, and then circle back around and start investing again in a 401k or a retirement plan. So I just need to preface this by saying that, I'm not a financial advisor, so you do want to, consult with a financial advisor if you have any questions about this. But this is pretty basic, and so I think this is pretty safe. These are pretty safe guidelines, and you will find a lot of this information, a lot of professionals and a lot of experts, have supported this information, that these are good guidelines when it comes to starting and building your emergency fund in the order in which you should do things. So anyway, that's all that I have for tonight. If you want to kickstart your emergency fund, you can start off by getting another $300 to $600 a month immediately with an instant cash flow, or with an instant paycheck. And look at the description below, and you can get more information on that. And then that way, that will help you kickstart your emergency fund. That's all that I have tonight. All the best to your success, and I will see you in the next video.